Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Ethan.
And I'm Rick.
And this is Roster United, a board game podcast. Here today, we have an awesome segment in today's episode. Let's Talk. Obviously, a very popular segment our fans and our listeners enjoy. Today, we are going to be reviewing, we're going to be talking about one board game in particular today. It's from Devir. It is a game designed by Phil Walker Harding and Steve Finn, and the illustration is by Jorge Tabanera. It is a game called Cities. This was one of the big release games from Gen Con 2024 this year, and we fortunately had gotten our hands on it. Somehow, surprisingly, we end up getting it before the doors were even open. How is that possible? Well, you can listen on the latest episode, or the last episode, I guess you could say, of the podcast. There we explained our little fun story and adventures there at Gen Con for more information. But we have the game here. We've played it multiple times, and today we have the opportunity to talk to you all about it, and at the end, give our rating of the game out of a 10. It's going to be very entertaining, very fun. I'm looking forward to it. What do you think? What do you say?
Yeah, I think this is going to be great. Looking forward to getting to this Let's Talk series.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've wanted to do some things here around getting some of the games we talked about at Gen Con. I think this is also awesome opportunity for us to do that. Give everybody just a little bit of a feel. For some of the groups that maybe haven't heard us talk through before, just kind of give everybody an idea of where we come from. So, we have different views on the games. We play we play all types of games, I think, right?
Yeah,
we
do.
We like Euro games, where you're just kind of not really attacking, but it's just kind of figuring out the puzzle. There's economic games. We have all types. We also have Ameritrash games where you're attacking, where you're going through action, where you're rolling a bunch of dice.
Mm-hmm.
I also have little kids and my wife. The littler kids, want to play simpler games a lot of times. My wife likes to play games, but she's really wants more of that kind of, I would say, gateway level. So we can kind of bring that perspective when we're looking at games. We just kind of have a broad view.
Yeah, absolutely. And today we're going to be giving you that, and we hope you enjoy. And of course, again, this is not only will we be expressing our opinions about the game, but at the same time, we will be giving you information to see if you would like to get your hands on it. Obviously, money is very valuable. We do not want to waste any dime, any cent on something that is not fun, not entertaining, or maybe something that is not for your gaming group. So here we go. Cities, fantastic game. Let's talk into maybe a little bit of some overview first off before we talk about our opinions, just so we can let everyone know the type of game this is. Could you handle that for us? Just like a little overview of, what we do in a turn and things like that.
Sure. Real brief, Cities is a game for 2 to 4 players. The box says it's about 45 minutes. I would say that's probably about right. Once you've played it, maybe that first time takes a little longer, but I'd say once you're going, it's a pretty fast-paced game. It's for 10 plus is what it says on the box. In Cities, you're basically being charged with the city council to rebuild a neighborhood. And these neighborhoods really are dependent of the city you're in. So what's pretty cool is basically you're going to have kind of two main portions of this game. You're going to have the central board in the middle of the table. Mm-hmm. And that's where everybody's going to be working off of. And then you're building a tableau in front of you.
Yeah.
And what are you building? Well, you're building these different cities, and there's basically 4 rows on the main board. And you're going to do a worker placement style, and you get to choose one spot in each of the rows. Mm-hmm. And that goes based off of turn order. So I'm going to go a little bit out of order. The top row is basically a scoring card row. So each round, you're going to be 4 scoring cards are going to be dealt. 3 are face up, one's face down. That's kind of a wild. And you're going to put your worker out there, and any of the cards that haven't been chosen, you can put your worker on there, and you get that card. Mm-hmm. And that card's going to be scored at the end of the game. Then the second row underneath is the one that I'm going to skip for now. The third row, I'll go to the second row. Second row is basically a tile you're going to get to choose. Mm-hmm. And this is how you're building out kind of the plots of your neighborhood. It's how you're planning it. So on these tiles, you have building spaces that you can build different colored buildings. They're a 2x2 tile, so there's 4 spaces on there. Another space is going to be a green space, which is for a park. It's kind of, flowery grass looking space, and then another space is a water space. And that's where you can plant different variety of things. So you're going to place one of those. When you buy that, you put your worker on it, you take that tile again, 3 are face up, one's face down in case you want to roll the dice, you don't like any of the ones that are there. You're going to place that in your tableau. And your tableau, you're basically building a 3x3 tableau. And you can do that in any order you want. You just got to make sure once you're 3 up and down and 3 horizontal, left and right, that's the end, right, of your city. So you can buy that tile, you can twist it, you can rotate it around, you can place that however you want, and they've got to lay out orthogonally next to each other. The third row, basically, is kind of like things you can do to those tiles. So you can place a worker, and a couple of the spaces give you 2 of these spots. So it might be a group of whales or a sailboat, and you can place those on your water spots. Another thing might be a hot dog stand or a merry-go-round, like a carnival merry-go-round. And you can place those in the park spaces. And another one might let you place a statue in one of your building spaces. So basically, these are ways to color your park. And those come in sets. So there's 4 different ones, and depending on how much you get those, how many points you get. And at the last row that you can choose from is basically the buildings themselves. So there's 4 spots where you can place a worker. And basically at the beginning of each round, buildings are drawn out of a bag. And that's where you're going to be pulling from. So like I mentioned on those tiles, there's squares on there that might be a blue square or a red square or a yellow square, and that's the color of building you can place on top. And so depending on where you put, you can select the buildings. Also, the last space in that row you get 2 random buildings out of the bag, and you automatically get the first player token for the next round. So if you want to make sure you're first player, that's what you got to do. So that's basically what you're doing. And then once you're pulling these things off, basically those scoring cards, of course, you'll have at the end of the round. When you pull the buildings off, you can put those buildings on any colored square that you want, as long as they match, right? So red building and a red square. But if there's already a building there, you just stack it on top. You turn it into a 2-story building. You can't go above 4 stories in a building. And that's kind of the game. It's pretty quick. At the end of each round, anything that wasn't chosen, you wipe it out and you reset up the board and you move to the next round. End game scoring kinds of works. There's a couple of things. There's 2 major things. One area I didn't mention is at the top of the board there's a slot. And you can slot in what I would call a city card. I'm not remember what they call that. It's like a city achievement board. And those are based on real cities. And that was kind of cool, I thought, in the game. So your city achievement board might be Indianapolis. That was the promo we got. They had Indianapolis on one side and Essen on the other. And Indianapolis is known for its downtown. So one of the scoring opportunities is to have like 4 red buildings around a park. And that's kind of how Indianapolis is a little bit. So the first player to do that gets to put a little token up there, and they get more points for completing that. And each city has 3 objectives. And anywhere along the time of the game, you can fulfill if you fulfill one of those objectives, you get to place a little scoring marker on there, and you get those points. So if you do it first, you might get 6 points. The second player to do it might only get 4, etc.
Yeah.
At the end of the game, you go through all your scoring cards that you selected, that you basically worker placement drafted throughout the game, total up your points, anything on those city achievements, and that's how you win.
It's very straightforward game. Just so everyone understands, that was kind of an overview of cities. It was very straightforward. You pick you pick one of your workers. In a 3 or 4 player game, you're gonna have at least 4 workers, and you pick one and you put them in one of those 4 rows. And in those 4 rows, there are 4 options for you to choose from, depending on how you want to build out your city. Very straightforward. Actually, on BoardGameGeek.com. The weight of the game, the complexity of the game is a 1.7. So fairly simple, straightforward, easy to teach as well. You teach that just now in 5 minutes, and sometimes I can struggle with teaching a game with a group of friends or family members, and I know I'm not the only one out there that might struggle with that. But this game was really straightforward to teach. So that was a little quick overview of cities. Moving on, what do we think about the components of the game? What how do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, I think to mention, if you go to the game store and buy this retail, it's $29.99, $30.
Yeah.
If you go on like a miniaturemarket.com and buy it there, it's going to be about $24. So it's very reasonably priced board game for what you're getting. I thought the components are fine. The cards seem to be of decent quality. They're not the greatest cards in the world, but they're also not flimsy, terrible cards that I've seen. The components on the buildings, they're nice buildings. They're chunky buildings. They're plastic. They stack well. I never had a problem like stacking the the buildings together, but they're not super detailed either. Minis and stuff like that. I thought that the tiles are good chunky tiles. So I thought the game was good. It comes with a nice bag. All the meeples are fine. And the big wooden star that marks the first player. I thought those components were great.
Yeah, the components are really nice, and like you said, with the stacking, each building stacks on top of each other, obviously, to make the goals of the game and things like that. And it's really nice components. Nothing too flashy, but it does really well for the price that you're getting for the game. The one thing I do want to mention, though, on most Devir games, there is no insert to the box, so you're kind of trying to fiddle in the cardboard pieces. There's quite a few of them, and you're trying to put them in the bag all together. We managed to fit it pretty well, but sometimes I can have... I'm that kind of guy that likes it really organized, especially in the board games, and games like Three Ring Circus or Rock Hard or even Cities, they don't have that insert. So for me personally, just because I'm that kind of guy, that really frustrates me a little bit.
I think it's the trade-off, though,
I mean,
right?
It's not that bad.
It's the trade-off.
Yeah.
So it does come with a bag.
Yeah, that is good.
It does come with a nice big bag, cloth bag, for all the buildings that you're drawing out of. You're right. There's no inserts. I wonder what Devir tries to do sometimes, and I agree with you. I'm kind of that guy. But it does save on the costs. I mean, if you probably have a nice fancy game trays insert where everything just fits great, which I would love to have, it's probably going to add $10 to that game for them. So, I agree. They did. I think they came with just a couple of bags, but it wasn't like enough, like plastic bags for. I believe for the meeples, like one for all the colors. We like to have them all kind of divided up a little bit.
Yeah,
and that's really so we can play quick too. But yeah, you're right. There's no organization in that box at all.
But the quality of the game is really nice, and the artwork as well is really nice. I love the cover of Cities. You can really tell. This game, the box cover really does stick out just looking at it. You can just tell, this is different from a lot of maybe other games you might have on your shelf. It really pops, and I do like the bright colors there. It's very nice components. Obviously, for the price that you're getting, it's really neat.
Yeah, I'd say $23. You can't $24. You can't beat the kind of game you're getting out of here, really.
And Cities the box itself is actually kind of small as well, smaller.
If you've had Three Ring Circus, it's that same size box.
About that same size, yeah.
I would say it's not the Ticket to Ride kind of standard box size. It's smaller than that. It is. Sure.
So it's great for traveling. If you want to put this in like a backpack or something, that's what I did.
That's a good point.
You could definitely put Cities in there. So definitely, and the gaming space doesn't require. I mean, it requires a bit obviously for the board and for your tiles and your 3x3, but it really doesn't require that much. I know there's a couple of hotels, that have those big oval tables and things like that. We were able to play Arcs on that. We were able to play some other games on it. Cities can really fit on a lot of those hotel tables if you're staying there.
Small table.
In your room, obviously, if you go to the lobby, it's definitely going to work there. But in your room, it's going to really work out if you have any
I'd say
sort of table.
It's a coffee table size game that it would play. Even 3 players, it fits pretty good.
Yeah.
Because you just have your tableau and then you have that table in the middle. I agree.
Absolutely. So, obviously, the components is really good. The price is really good. But what about the actual gameplay? Is it fun? Is this game really good? Well, here we go. This is our opinion time now about the board game itself. I'll let you go first if you'd like. What do you think about the game? Is it fun? Just kind of run us down. Give us your whole spiel here.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's to teach it. It's really easy to teach. Especially once you get your head wrapped around. If you're playing with newer gamers, the 3x3 tile. We did play it with my wife, your mom. Once you got wrapped around what it was simple. It was easy to grasp at that point. I think where the fun comes into is in a couple of areas. One, it's very replayable. You're drawing those tiles that's different every time. You're not going to see every tile every game. If you're playing with less than 4 players, especially, you're not going to see every victory point. I would have liked to see maybe a little more variety in the point scoring cards. I thought they'd get a little repetitive. In fact, some of them are just flat out the same, which is nice.
You
to
play
get
through
multiple.
most of them.
Yeah, well, and sometimes they would come out. The same victory card would come out. So, for example, there might be a card that says 2 points for every 2-story red building you have, and there might be 2 of those in the same choice.
Yeah.
So. And it would just be, okay, well, now the other cards would be 2 points for every 2-story blue building, or 2 points for every 2-story yellow. So some of that got a little repetitive, but I love the puzzle of it, for sure. The other thing that makes it replayable before I move on to the other piece is those city boards at the top. So those kind of overarching achievements you're trying to get. In the box, you get 4 of those boards, and there's a different city on each side. So you got like New York, Mexico City, you got Barcelona. So you got different cities. So that changes kind of your overarching goal. If you want to go for those bonus points, there's 8 different cities. We were able to get the Essen Indianapolis promo city thing at the top. I'm sure Dice Tower will have that, or BGG's really good about selling those if you go to the BGG store. So I thought that was really cool. The other piece too is just kind of that, like typical games, that kind of worker placement play. It's like, okay, you know what? Do I care? The scoring tiles at the top for me this round aren't that important. I'm gonna play my worker in the 3rd row and pick up those kind of decorations, those park decorations and statues, because I really need those too.
Yeah.
Right. And then, or maybe I'm going last, and it's like, oh, you know what? Both of them already picked the 3rd row with the decoration, or they already picked a tile. So I can go there last. It won't matter to me. I'm going to go down here and get the buildings that I want for mine. So that kind of strategy kind of works really well too. But each game is its own puzzle. It's like, what am I trying to build to maximize my space?
Absolutely.
And I thought that was fun.
I thought that's really fun.
And it's quick.
It's quick. Really quick.
You do this over 9 rounds, so you get a tile per round. Obviously, you're doing 3x3, 9 tiles, 9 rounds, game over.
Yep. And, yeah, I really do think, like you said, it is pretty replayable. You do go through all of the achievement cards. You do go through all of the tile buildings and things like that. The only thing that makes it replayable is the different order of it. And again, like you mentioned, right, every turn you're going to get a tile. Every turn you're also going to get one of those achievement cards. You're going to be different goals and stuff, and that's how... and a different pair of buildings and more, amusement park things. And, you're going to keep getting that every single turn. You're going to have 9 opportunities to do that. What I liked about that was that you're constantly, what I feel when I'm playing the game, you constantly feel like sometimes you change strategies in building, right? For example, there's a couple of cards there. It's like for any building that is a size of 2, you get a point. Right, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, well, I got, 8 buildings here that are, 2, or that are a size 2, exactly, and, that's 8 points at the end. But then there's another goal that says, oh, but if you get 3, if all your blue buildings are a size 3, you get 2 points or something like that. So you start changing, and depending on how much you really want to get and points, and it's just really neat. You're constantly, what I feel, changing that strategy, constantly changing due to what's out there, because you have to pick it at the end of the round, or at the start of it, in the middle, whatever. You have to pick it. That's the game.
But you also have that overarching city achievements.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it might be you need 4 red buildings next to a park.
Yeah.
Or you need multiple parks.
Yeah.
The way you design your city. So
exactly.
You're trying to balance, like, can I satisfy these goal cards and also the city achievement? Mm-hmm. Because I would say, I'm not going to sit here and say we played the best at it. We played it a handful of times. I think you got up into maybe the 70 points a couple times the last time we played.
The record I had was 78. And then the last game I played was 75. I've won both of them.
So,
anyway.
So, that city achievement, if you're first, many times it's like a 6-point thing.
Yeah.
So if you do get those, it's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're trying to build towards those goals, but sometimes, you're just like, well, I can't, how I have it structured, I can't necessarily get it. So you start focusing on your goals. But if you can try to do that actual city goals, every city has 3 of them. It is a big point differential. The first goal is like 7 points if you get it. And the person that comes in last, I believe, gets like 3 points or something like that.
In a 3-player game, they might get 3 or 2, depending on what it is.
And on a 4-player game, they don't. If you're last, you don't even get anything of it. So obviously, being from 7 points to 0 is a big differential there. So trying to get those is really good. But honestly, for me playing this game quite a bit, I've noticed that it don't really matter if you're first or last. You always you can still get points. You can still win the game, and sometimes people can freak out about that. Oh, I'm last. Well, I'm not going to win this or whatever.
You mean last in turn order?
In turn order.
Yeah, and you can control that too. That was the other thing to mention from the rules. So that bottom row where the buildings are at, there is a spot where you can choose to get random colored buildings. Mm-hmm. You only get 2 instead of 4, like the first slot, but you are the first player. Mm-hmm. Now, if no one, like in a 3-player game, there's only 4 spots. If no one chooses that, it's the player who's closest to it. So there's 4 slots. The player closest to that 4th slot. You're in slot 3, you're going to get first player. So that's kind of a risk you can do too. Really is like, can I get the extra buildings? They're the colors I want. Mm-hmm. But I'm not guaranteed first. But if no one chooses that last slot, I'm going to get first anyway.
Absolutely. And, I just really enjoyed that. I'm a big worker placement fan. I love Dune Imperium as an example. I love that.
Way more complicated.
Well, this is way more complicated. But, it has that worker placement. Stone Age is kind of the OG worker placement game, which is really fun. It's very basic, but it's worker placement. Cities is that sort of worker placement. It's going back to the classic style of it. I know nowadays people like to add different elements to it with deck building or controlling or whatever. Cities, yes, you are tableau building, which I did like.
I think that's what's cool about it.
It's
an intro game that way.
Yeah,
right?
It really is.
Like you can now teach if you played this with folks, and this is kind of how we learned games, right? We started off. It's probably been 13, 14 years ago. We didn't start with Ticket to Ride and Stone Age.
Yeah.
Right? We used it to teach us mechanics. And then, when we were learning games, it's like, oh, okay, well, it has this like Stone Age does. And it has, when they start combining these mechanics. So now you can say, hey, you remember in cities where you place the worker and you take that? Mm-hmm. Well, this is the same. If you're teaching a worker placement game, right? Like you said, it's got tableau building. Mm-hmm. You're building this tableau out. You're meeting these goals. Yeah. Now you can use this to venture off into other games. I would add, I think that, the 10-year-old, spot on. I know there's people who probably say, oh, my 7-year-old could play that. That's probably true, too. The tricky part is just kind of the long-term planning, like you said, the adapting.
Yeah.
Right? As a kid, if you're just trying to build a cool city, it's going to look neat. But if you're trying to hit those points and win, it can get confusing because maybe you've been working to 2-story buildings of a color, and now only scoring cards are 4-story buildings. Mm-hmm. Are you going to scrap your 2-story plan and go for the 4s, or are you just going to take the card and ignore it?
Yeah.
So that's where the complexity can come into. Is you've now got, because remember, you're taking a scoring card every round. By the end of the game, you've got the 3 city achievements and 9 scoring cards at the bottom.
Yep.
And unless you're just a master builder better than I am, it's hard to try and do all 9 of those unless you can keep finding the same ones that meet it. So
yeah,
and you gotta ignore it. You gotta admit that. You just gotta know it, right? On this card, I'm probably gonna get 1 point, but this other card, I'm gonna get 8. Yeah, and that's kind of how I think you gotta play it out. At least me.
Yeah, and it is really a straightforward game, and that's why I really enjoy this one. I've played it with a couple of family members, my aunt and uncle, who aren't really heavy into the board games. They're not necessarily scared of the kind of games I bring, but they know that we like to play board games. They know we like to play especially hobby type board games like these. But I teach them cities, and my uncle really enjoyed it, and I was really shocked because I don't see him playing a whole lot of these hobby games and stuff like that and things. but he got into this. He really, really enjoyed it, and he understood it as well. And so did my aunt as well. She really enjoyed it, and it's something people will really be attracted of, especially with the cities and things like that. People are like, oh, let's play in New York City or whatever, or Mexico City, or things like that. People start picking, and then the strategy comes in. I really like that. Just for seeing them play. I see that they're getting into it. They're planning ahead. This game is, again, straightforward and simple with the worker placement. And they now understand what worker placement is for the next game that I bring out that has worker placement or whatever. So this game is really just fun. Everybody that I've played with it has enjoyed it. I like this game. I really, really do. And yeah, I really do. I don't know. I know that adding maybe an expansion to add more tiles, add more achievement cards, add more cities. I know that can really be a step up to the game. Adding different, it's not just your standard buildings and park, or park water, but, structuring the actual
different types of tiles,
different types of structure they're made, just to provide more strategy and things like that. And obviously the achievement cards to bring in some freshness into the game, maybe adding actual, like, instead of like just for how many water spaces you have connected, or how many different parks you have separated, something like how many buildings you have connected, or per, you get 1 point for every yellow building next to a blue building, or something like that, just to make the game more, feel different, and you don't burn through every single card every single game. That's, one of the things, I guess, you kind of go in, you're like, well, if that comes out, I know what to do. I know this and that. Because you do burn through everything in that game every time you play it. So I guess an expansion would be nice. But for what it is now, it's a great game. It's a great game for new players. Game for us as experienced players. Very fun. A nice light game. Change of pace. And again, I'm a big worker placement guy. This definitely fills that cup of tea for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I like about it. If you're a gamer, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably enjoy hobby games. We always want that game, right? We want that game we can play with family members who maybe not be in the hobby, but it's not Monopoly, it's not Spades. We can play something that's a little more gamery, but they can also enjoy it. Mm-hmm. You can kind of get competitive with it. You can try your hardest, but they can get into it and really give you a good run. Cities is a great game for that.
Absolutely. Well, now we're going to do... not the next segment. It's part of the segment. It's called High or Low. Here we're going to be talking about our ratings, giving our official rating here, but we're going to compare it to what people have talked about the game. For example, in Board Game Geek, there's been hundreds of people that have rated Cities as a 7.6. Now is it a high or lower than that? Give us your rating there.
Honestly, that's probably about where I would put it. I guess I would say on the higher side just because I know it's a game I can get out with multiple groups. I personally enjoy it. Mm-hmm. It's a quick game. It just feels a really good niche for me. Absolutely. So I would go on the high side of that.
Yeah, I would also go on the high side. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, specifically an 8 out of 10. I feel like this game is just, again, straightforward, easy to teach, easy to learn, easy to play as well, to understand. The player interaction is fun. Trying to beat somebody to get a space, trying to beat somebody to be first player, to potentially get something good to help you out in the future. The different achievements that you have, constantly changing your strategy and how you're building your buildings is very intense, very exciting. And what I also like about this game is that when you're building your city, other than people taking away what's on the board, they can't affect what's already placed on the building. So you can't, at least for now, unless if they do some crazy expansion or something. But for now, you cannot mimic, change somebody else's building. So I like that once you have it placed, it's good. So it's nice, gamer-friendly, you could say. And I just really enjoyed that. I guess the only downfall of it is, again, just adding more content to it, more tiles, more achievements, more cities, things like that. But for now, there's still some cities we haven't played, but we've played enough that I really enjoy it. You obviously have given it a higher than a 7.6, So that's obviously something positive to the game.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Love it. That's great.
So we give it an 8 out of 10. Or is it an 8 out of 10 or is it,
Yeah, it's like a 7.7.
7.7.
It's just
Okay.
right over that to me. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And so yeah, obviously this will get an approval, get a success, a clear, a thumbs up. There you go. That'll give us a thumbs up and of this game. So we definitely recommend this to anybody who wants to get it. You can buy it right now online, I believe.
Yeah, it is available now.
It is available now online. And there's plenty of other Gen Con games as well that are going to be available online or that already are. And we're going to give you our opinions very soon on those games. We are very excited to talk about it. But for now, Cities, 8 out of 10, 7.7 out of 10. Very, very awesome game. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here, listening to today's episode and our review of Cities. We clearly enjoyed it. We hope you can get your hands on it. And, hey, have a great time with it with your friends and family. That is definitely going to be a fun game for you all to enjoy. On the next episode, we hope we can talk about some more Gen Con board games. We have a couple of ones that we've played recently, like Middle Ages. We've played Rock Hard. We've played Arcs. We've played a bunch of and a bunch of other games as well in our list. River of Gold is another one that just recently came out as well. So we will definitely be picking one of those games and talking about it on the next one. We will also be doing another episode soon. Either we both can or we're still undecided on that, but we could talk a little bit on the Essen preview. We will not be going to Essen, but we do know that it's a very popular thing, probably more popular than Gen Con. It's the biggest convention in the world for board games. So obviously, we're going to be going through some of the fun new expansions, games, things like that, and we want to provide you as much information as you can if you're going to Essen or if you're planning on buying anything that comes out of it very soon. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again so much for listening to today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you all in the next one. I am your host, Ethan.
And I'm Rick.
And we'll see you later.
Adios.